Now there's two parts of my life, the before and the after.
Mm-hmm.
I'm obviously not the same person I was, after what's happened to me. Just watched him die right before my eye. I saw the emergency room doctor slamming his fist on the table and just walking away in despair because there's nothing like losing a child. So I had my baby, and my God, I'm telling you, Bruce, when I saw that baby, it's just like that kind of love you can't even imagine, and if you believe in God, I felt like this is how God loves us. Okay. But you can never bring back the child you lost. I don't care if you have 10 children, you lose one, it doesn't replace the one that you lost.
Unsolicited Perspectives Podcast. Episode clip.
Before my life changed, because now there's two parts of my life, the before and the after.
Mm-hmm.
I'm obviously not the same person I was, after what's happened to me. I had a very beautiful life. I have a wonderful, physician husband who I'm very proud of. We went through professional school together, and I had a tremendous career and just a normal life that I really took for granted,
Mm-hmm.
And I'm a child of an immigrant. My parents came to America 30 years ago and, brought us to US, and, we were disciplined and we worked really hard to achieve that American dream.
Mm-hmm.
I became a dentist and, went through financial hardship of paying off my loans and, building a practice and, all of that, and built a beautiful family. And I was at the top of my game. I think I was at the top of my world. I mean, I'm 47. I will be turning 48 actually in March. So, wow, I'm almost 50 years old,
Happy birthday.
Thank you. And I have to say, my 30s were really hard because that's when I lost my son. I left him at a daycare, and he died in daycare. And it was any ordinary day that you were just gonna have. Like, I had friends over, we were having a great brunch, and they left, and I was cleaning up the kitchen, and I get a phone call saying, your son stopped breathing. So I ran to the emergency room that day and just watched him die right before my eye. I mean, it's the most, it's the most difficult thing that you can ever see is being helpless as a parent, to know that it's completely out of control, right?
Mm-hmm.
Even if I was on my knees and hands begging the doctors to save him. And they did try for an hour to get him back, but ultimately, they had to say it was done. I mean, they couldn't save his life. I saw the emergency room doctor slamming his fist on the table and just walking away in despair, because there's nothing like losing a child. And the result was that he died of SIDS. But we're really not sure because the autopsy report came back as, he had viral pneumonia. But they don't really like to even label SIDS anymore. They don't, if they find like a little bit of, like, he was sick with a cold, so, they labeled it as viral pneumonia.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know why the term became like almost like political. Like they try not to diagnose that as SIDS anymore. So
You learn something new every day. I
yeah,
didn't know that.
right?
So take me back, and this is always a touchy subject, the loss of a child. I just want to go back to the beginning of meeting your husband, having a family, and you have another child as well.
Yes.
Just walk me through that process of, because you said you were on top of the world,
Yeah.
professionally and personally.
Yes.
Take me to the process of building the family.
Well, we really struggled, right, to get through school because it was so hard. And, my husband and I did long distance for 4 years while we were in professional school. I was in California. I went to Loma Linda University. So I was there, and he was in Illinois. He was in an MD PhD program, which is, really hard, but it helped pay for his medical school tuition. And I came out with, a lot of debt. And, it was a struggle to pay that off. So we actually put off having our family because I wanted to make sure that he got through his training, and I wanted to make sure that, I was successful and that I was paying down my debt. And, that's what I did. I worked really hard. And, the funny thing is, when we first got married, we didn't even want to have children. And but then when I entered my 30s and I had a great career, that was really hard to give up too because as a woman, you just have that biological clock that you feel like, okay, if you don't do this now, like you might miss that opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
So when I had Jimmy, my oldest, I was 34. So I don't feel like I was super young, but I wasn't super old. So I had my baby and my God, I'm telling you, Bruce, when I saw that baby, it's just like that kind of love you can't even imagine,
Mm.
and if you believe in God, I felt like, wow, this is how God loves us. That's what I felt like looking at your child. And it was such a gift. And I embraced that motherhood. I mean, even my mom said, my God, like you love your career so much, but for you to even want to go down to part-time or wanting to quit, I mean, she found that to be like amazing that I was willing to give up my career for my child. And I did go down to part-time, but I was hesitant about having another baby because I didn't want to give up my career all the way. So there was
Right.
still that ambition. And I did have Alexander 5 years down the road because I was approaching 40 and I was like, oh my gosh, my biological clock is ticking. And by then my husband had become partner and he was, making great income. Like he was really successful. So I decided that I'm just gonna cut back in dentistry completely. And I wanted to be home to my two boys. Um, so yeah, so I had the second baby, and what I did learn is, you can't really time life. You
No.
just can't.
Mm-mm.
What I'm learning is that there's never a right time to have a family. There's never a right time to build a business. You just have to do it, when you feel that it needs to get done. Because I regretted having my second baby so long because after he died, I started on IVF right away.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have the fertility that I did. And, with that pregnancy came a lot of complication. I ended up having to, cut out an ovary because a cyst grew with it.
Mm.
So when he died, before he died, when I was giving birth to him, I told the doctor, just do the salpingectomy, which is where they cut the fallopian tube. So I sterilized myself because I decided that I didn't want to have more babies. I was getting too old and I was having complications with the pregnancy.
Mm-hmm.
That's another mistake I made was just doing something that was irreversible, a procedure. But
Mm.
you never know the future. So here I had a dead child, and I don't have my fertility anymore. So the only option was to do an IVF journey, and I think that was a distraction because that was my way of getting through the grief, right? And I am telling you right now, I have a whole new respect for women who are going through infertility because I have been on both sides of the fences where I was able to get pregnant very easily. I never even thought about that. It just, as soon as I was off the pill, I'm pregnant, right? So, and then there's whole, population of women who struggle with this. And here I was now doing this horrific journey where I'm injecting myself with all kind of hormones. But in reality, what I was trying to do was I was trying to bring back my son.
Mm.
Okay, but you can never bring back the child you lost. I don't care if you have 10 children. You lose one, it doesn't replace the one that you lost. Ultimately, the IVF failed. I miscarried all 4 embryos, 2 years of doing it. So I was grieving and I'm doing IVF and spent $130,000 because, IVF is very expensive.
It's expensive and very like taxing physically,
Yes,
correct?
yes,
Yeah,
because
it's not an easy process for most men out there. They're like, what's the big deal? You just get a shot. No, if you've
no,
known anybody that goes through it, it is very physically taxing.
it is because for women, it's extremely invasive because you have to go under so that they can retrieve your eggs.
Mm-hmm.
And I was doing this at one of the world's best fertility clinic. It was called Colorado, Institute of Reproductive, CCRM. And Dr. Schoolcraft was amazing. Like, I mean, he will get like all the Hollywood stars pregnant, right? I mean, this is how desperate I was. And, he looked at me and said, I'm sorry, but your, AMH level is so low, which is like the egg count.
Mm-hmm.
And he said women's fertility just drops after 40. And he recommended that I use donor eggs. But, after 2 years of doing it, I didn't have the energy anymore, and it was weird, like looking through lists of women that was supposed to look like me. It's like looking at a dating site. And I'm trying to like look for women that like that had like my weight, my height, but then they would take that woman's egg and then they would put it with my husband's sperm and impregnate, put it inside my uterus because I still have good uterus. It's just my eggs were bad. And when I thought about that, I just decided, maybe it's just not meant to be at that point. So I was just tired.
Join the conversation and follow the Unsolicited Perspectives podcast on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your audio podcasts.